It all began 3 million years ago, when humans were nothing more than stinking apes dominating wildlife. Among them was the protagonist of our story, a simple Australopithecus with an unusually strong love for hunting. However, the trait that distinguished him from all the others was an extraordinary one. He never died. While his companions turned to dust over the millennia, he remained alive to witness everything. Countless eons passed, but time had no effect on him. In the vastness of his life, he dedicated himself to hunting, battling, and fighting. At some point, this ceased to be just a way of life and became his obsession and sole purpose. Simply put, tearing apart his prey became his greatest delight. After spending 3 million years living to the fullest, this being reached an absolutely imposing physical state. Through sheer brute strength acquired over years of combat, he became so powerful that he literally ascended to the ranks of the gods. It did not take long for him to become the #1 god of the divine realm. Now, Mo, the one who was once just an ordinary ape, rules planet Earth. However, becoming a god or some divine entity had never been his goal. And at this moment, boredom consumes him. Out of pure tedium, he lightly presses the ground beneath his feet with a simple touch of his finger, and that small gesture is enough to shake the entire planet. The place where he sits is none other than the sanctuary of the gods, known as the divine realm. Every god in the sanctuary feels the massive earthquake caused by Mo's casual touch, especially the second-ranked god Lucifer, the god of Elm, who is visibly annoyed by the tremor, as he has no doubt about who is responsible. Meanwhile, Mo slumps on his throne with an evidently bitter mood. It seems that he has already defeated everyone who could have posed a real challenge, and now there is no one left capable of facing him. It has been so long since his last battle that he cannot even remember when it was. Perhaps it was 1,000 years ago, the last time he fought. It seems he is literally suffering from his own success. He is so powerful that there is no one left to challenge him. But now that he thinks about it, if there is no one strong enough to face him, perhaps all he needs to do is weaken himself to make things interesting again. With this brilliant idea in mind, Mo decides to possess the body of a weak human on Earth, where he will seek new opportunities to fight. Without wasting time, he calls his familiar John. The enormous reptilian creature quickly appears, ready to heed his master's summons. John is no ordinary companion. He is the supreme god's secretary, and his name literally means dragon. When John asks the reason for this sudden call, Mo casually explains his plan to visit Earth. Upon hearing this, John panics and immediately casts an absolute binding spell, chaining his master. He demands a reasonable explanation for such an abrupt and reckless decision. With the gathering of the gods approaching, Mo is supposed to remain in his place and fulfill his responsibilities. But Mo shows not the slightest interest in any of that. Without even acknowledging the spell, he begins to walk, dragging his gigantic reptilian secretary as if he weighed nothing. John desperately struggles to stop him, but it is a futile effort. The real reason he does not want Mo to leave is not just duty, it is fear. This reptile knows that once his master is gone, the other gods will take out all their frustration and grudges on him. He is certain they will use him as their personal punching bag to vent all the pent-up anger they have toward Mo. But now that Mo has made a definitive decision, there is no power in the world that can stop him from fulfilling his desire to fight. Without any effort, he breaks the chains that bind him and turns to his secretary, openly declaring that he would consider staying only if John is willing to face him in combat. Mo makes his stance clear. Of course, being utterly crushed by his own master is the last thing this poor reptile wants. Nervously, he simply wishes him a good journey instead of accepting the challenge. With all obstacles out of his way, Mo focuses his attention on finding a candidate to possess. Tuning in to the thoughts of humans on Earth, he scans the vast sea of minds, listening to their desires and yearnings. Among all the noise, one thought stands out clearly: the desire of a particular individual who longs to be sent to another world. Mo grins from ear to ear upon discovering this. Not only has he found the perfect candidate to possess, but he can also grant him his wish as a bonus. It is a win-win for both of them. Then he turns to his familiar and announces that he will leave his body behind, delegating to John the responsibility of taking care of whoever ends up occupying it. This sends John into a frenzy as he desperately tries to reason with his master. He explains that if the soul leaves the body, and if he dies, the soul will also perish. But Mo, being the obstinate force that he is, has already made a decision. He ignores Joe's concerns and promises him that he will return as soon as possible. Now let's switch to this 17-year-old earthling named Leo, who until now is nothing more than a nobody, living his life by inserting himself as the protagonist in video games where he can feel on top of the world. But this will be the last game he plays because he is tired of his pathetic existence and is about to end his life, hoping to be sent to another world and live the life he truly desires. Without hesitation, he jumps. As he falls, Leo curses his god, trying to provoke him into sending him to another world. Eventually, he impacts the ground with an unpleasant splattering sound, and after dying, the next thing he sees is a huge beast in front of him, making him break out in a cold sweat. Both Leju and Johan repeat the same question. Who the hell are you? We return to Mo, who possesses Leju's body a second before he impacts the ground. And as soon as the body becomes a bloody mess from the impact, Mo can barely move his limbs. Before continuing, here's a small lesson about involuntary muscles. Muscles that move without conscious control are called involuntary muscles. The heart and the muscles of the internal organs are examples of involuntary muscles. Mo, who has spent 3 million years training only his physical body, has reached the pinnacle of understanding of the human form. He can consciously control every part of the body, including blood vessels. And yes, even involuntary muscles are no exception. He repairs the heart of the dying body by manipulating the blood vessels and even manages to stop the bleeding. Honestly, it's been a long time since he's lost so much blood, so the sensation of bleeding out excites him like never before. Now, he feels extremely proud of his decision to come here. First, he decides to head to the base, which, of course, is the home of the Earthling Lee Ho. After returning to Lee's bedroom, Mo spends hours exploring his memories and discovers most of the things he needs to know. Apparently, Lee only has one relative, a man who lives far away, so Lee lives alone. Simply put, Lee perfectly fits the profile of someone poor, and his current occupation consists of attending a place called school. Moreover, there is a particular guy who always finds excuses to beat him up until he's on the verge of passing out. This only makes Mo even more excited since his sole purpose on this planet is to fight. He is ready to jump straight into a fight and crush anyone who crosses his path. While he is filled with excitement, he suddenly feels a slight pain in his muscles. He quickly realizes that this discomfort is the result of the time he spent balancing on his hands earlier. Although the pain is intense and could seem like a major inconvenience, Mo feels absolutely ecstatic experiencing this familiar sensation of muscle pain, something he hasn't felt in 1,000 years. The next day, the place where Lee fell catches the attention of the authorities and is soon declared a restricted crime zone. With so much blood on the ground, they try to figure out who it might belong to. Mo also notices the officers gathered there, but avoids that path and heads directly to his class. Upon arriving at school, Mo opens the classroom door with the strength of an animal, causing it to rebound and hit him in the face. Inside, a guy he had already seen in Leo's memories takes note of his presence and confronts him over his apparent stupidity. Seeing this familiar face, Mo quickly remembers that this is the same idiot who used to bully Lee Ho. The sight of his prey served on a silver platter fills him with absolute euphoria. Even the bully gets somewhat sarcastic upon seeing how this loser grins maniacally. Without warning, he lowers his phone, prepares himself, and throws a punch. The blow makes Mo's face bleed, but he does not react at all to this preemptive attack. You see, Mo has his own rules when it comes to fighting. A fight only begins when all parties involved have an implicit understanding, or you could call it a will to fight. Therefore, the key lies in confirming the opponent's intent. The way to do this is by waiting for the enemy's preemptive attack. Although this code of conduct causes considerable damage to Mo's face, he is delighted because now he finally has the green light to proceed with the fight. Without thinking twice, he throws a devastating punch straight at this idiot's face. Mo puts so much strength into his punch that all the muscles in his arms become electrified with the pain of muscle fatigue. The pain is so unbearable that he literally makes a face as if he had eaten something disgusting. Let's not forget that this is happening in a classroom, and the teacher immediately starts yelling furiously upon seeing these two idiots fighting. On the other hand, the bully feels his pride crumble after receiving such a brutal blow. To save his dignity, he lunges at Mo. Mo enters high alert but is unsure if he will be able to defend himself. If his body were in good shape, he could easily dodge that attack. But since he currently lacks the necessary strength, he decides to use a trick he has up his sleeve. Even so, he ends up taking a strong hit from the bully and learns the hard way that there is no mana on Earth. The bully prepares to throw another punch while Mo faces the fact that he is running out of options to defend himself. Still, he braces himself to face this idiot head-on. Even if he can't use his arms, legs, or magic, my boy simply uses his hard head, literally, and takes the hit directly to the skull. Mo's skull is so solid that the bully hears the crunch of his own bones, leaving him in agonizing pain he never thought he would experience. While his opponent is stunned and distracted by the pain, Mo takes advantage of the opportunity and headbutts him directly in the abdomen, right where the weakest point of the human body is, the solar plexus. Then he follows up with an upward strike, once again using his head, hitting the bully under the chin. With that final blow, the bully's knees lose all remaining strength, and all the Generation Alpha kids in the room immediately pull out their phones to record the guy in his misery. Everyone's faces glisten with sweat as they watch Lejo win effortlessly. Just yesterday, they saw him get beaten up, but this incredible comeback is absolutely inconceivable. Our protagonist crouches down and makes sure to express his gratitude to the bully, but his way of doing so is somewhat unusual, something even I didn't expect. He literally opens his mouth, bites off the bully's ear, and spits it onto the floor in the most barbaric way possible. This scene deepens everyone's anxiety even further. Imagining that this guy literally ripped off someone's ear so casually is simply terrifying. But well, this is Mo's twisted way of leaving his mark on those who offer him a fun fight. It's his warped version of expressing gratitude while marking them as a toy that can bring him joy. From now on, they would be called Mo's toys. Only strong opponents could give him an entertaining fight, so naturally, Mo's toys became a symbol of strength in his eyes. But on Earth, things don't work like that. It's no wonder that the custom Mo has been following is generating hatred. Even students from other classes are talking about Mo. Sure, a student hitting another is nothing new, but someone being mutilated like this is unprecedented in the school. Through the windows, all the students watch as the bully is carried into the ambulance. Mo is delighted that this place even offers at-home treatment. As the ambulance speeds away, he waves enthusiastically at the bully. Although our boy has obtained the thrill of the fight he so desired, it is now finally time to face the consequences. The furious teacher is standing right behind him. Once in the office, the teacher begins scolding him furiously. The teacher is so angry that he instinctively raises his hand to hit Mo. For his part, Mo only gets excited at the idea of the imminent blow and really wants the teacher to hit him. But upon seeing how thrilled Mo looks, the teacher starts trembling and stops dead in his tracks. He simply turns around, convinced that arguing with this lunatic is useless, and tells Mo to bring his parents. With that, he grants him permission to leave school early. A while later, Mo walks the streets visibly downcast, as he couldn't fight anymore. However, at least they gave him time to recover from the damage. There is much to do if he wants to keep fighting with this weak body. If only he could use mana, it would be a total game changer for him. Mana is a power beyond humans, known by various names like Kaio or Chakra in some places, but in most cases, it is simply called mana is basically the vital force present in all of nature. In some worlds, humans use it to become hunters, and in others, to become magicians. However, on Earth, there is no mana, which means that magic and abilities that depend on it cannot be used. Mo even tries to manipulate magic, but his attempts are in vain. It seems that he has no choice but to rely solely on his physical strength. Despite this, he decides to return to the sanctuary of the gods and come back the next day once his body is completely healed. When he arrives, he finds Li strangling poor Yongguang. A few minutes later, Li goes directly to Mo, expressing his desire to take the dragon with him to another world. After all, with this dragon by his side, he would be invincible from the start. However, Mo does not pay much attention to this human's words. He simply conjures a giant hand that grabs Li and begins to walk away without fully clarifying his intentions, though he briefly mentions that he will definitely send him to another world. A while later, they arrive at Lucifer's domain, the second-ranked god. Mo storms into the castle without asking for permission or announcing himself. Meanwhile, Lucifer already knows what is happening and why Mo is there, so he refuses outright without even listening to him. But Mo insists, making it clear that he has already decided to send this boy to another world. So, he humbly requests that Lucifer open the gate. Of course, Lucifer hates Mo with all his might and detests how he tries to give him orders. Moreover, he has no reason to obey him, but Mo quickly reminds him of the enormous power gap between them, which should be reason enough for Lucifer to comply. If he still has a problem, he can try hitting him and settling it that way. Lucifer, knowing exactly how that would end, has no choice but to give in and proceeds to open the portal. However, Mo stops him immediately, deciding to take care of the matter personally. Lucifer reminds him that interfering in another god's domain goes against the unwritten rules of the gods. He warns that if a god interferes in another's domain, a defensive barrier will be activated. But Mo, being who he is, breaks the barrier with his bare hands despite the warning, leaving Lucifer absolutely incredulous. After breaking the barrier, Mo releases the boy and orders him to jump into the portal, assuring him that he will arrive in another world. But Dai is not so sure about stepping into an unknown place without the dragon he asked for. Mo, however, rejects him outright, stating that Yong belongs to him. He simply wishes him luck in finding his own dragon. With that, he uses his giant hand to throw the boy into the portal, sending him to the new world. With the mission accomplished, Mo decides to leave. Lucifer, on the other hand, remains there, his hands trembling with rage. And that is because Lucifer originally came from his own domain, the planet Alan. He was the first demon king, standing at the pinnacle of all living beings. With all the power he had under his control, he became too arrogant to the point of challenging the entity known as God. Surprisingly, he managed to kill the god he had challenged, taking his place. Basically, Lucifer ascended to the top by defeating other gods. At that moment, he was the god of gods, the absolute ruler, invincible, supreme, legendary, and unparalleled. A catastrophic, mythical, infinite, and transcendental force. In short, a completely indomitable entity, at least until Mo appeared. Therefore, in the present, it is not surprising that Lucifer deeply hates the brute known as Mo. Outside, as Mo jumps onto Yong to leave, a huge, ominous eye attentively watches our hero. Let's switch back to Lucifer, who is now as red as a tomato, filled with rage boiling inside him. Now let's return to the bully, whose face curiously resembles an enraged Lucifer. He is absolutely furious after being beaten by someone he considered a pathetic loser. He has no intention of letting Li go unpunished, especially after being humiliated like that. It is a direct blow to his pride, and he does not plan to sit idly by. To take revenge, he decides to resort to his trump card. Enter Kaon. King Kaon is a muscular guy and a middleweight boxing champion in the youth division of the Sentaro National Sports Festival. While sweating in the gym, a phone suddenly rings in the locker room, catching his attention. It turns out that the phone is not his, but his friend W. Cheol's, a boxer with 2 years of experience and 14 sparring sessions. He picks up his phone and questions the bully about what he wants. The bully reminds him who he is and asks if he had not said that his phone screen was broken and if he still needed a new one. Upon hearing that, Cheol falls silent, somewhat confused. Finally, upon hearing the bully's words, he smiles with interest and asks him to get to the point. The next day, The bully returns to school covered in bandages. He walks silently among his classmates, who watch him nervously. Surprised to see his face, they start wondering if he really ended up like that after always messing with Mo. They whisper among themselves that he had been acting tough all this time, but that apparently he is nobody. They add that they were afraid of him for no reason and mock him, wondering if he is about to be castrated. Tired of the silence and full of rage, the bully stands up and throws his backpack to the ground while cursing. Looking at his classmates, he asks them if they really dare to whisper loudly enough for him to hear. He yells at them that if they have a problem, they should face him directly. At that moment, a girl, laughing, stands up, looks at him intently, and tells him to stop throwing a tantrum or to leave the class. He has gone crazy. Then he takes a seat, and as he moves toward her, she asks if perhaps he wants to be eliminated while doing this, and the other classmates watch in fear. At that moment, a teacher enters and questions what is happening. Seeing him, the bully hurriedly takes a seat, surprising his classmates. The teacher turns to the class president and asks why she is standing. She quickly sits down and assures him that nothing has happened. Changing the subject, the teacher asks the president to see him after school. She asks the reason, and with a smile, the teacher mentions Mo, saying that the one who made a scene the day before has not answered his phone. After saying this, he leaves while assuring the president that he will write her a letter of recommendation for her last year, but asks her as a favor to talk to Mo. Several hours later, the president arrives at Mo's house. Her face shows that she arrived reluctantly. She approaches the door and starts knocking, asking if anyone is there. Receiving no response, she decides to enter upon seeing that the door was open. She is surprised and finds Mo lying on the floor. Observing his pale face, the girl lets out a terrified scream. Hours later, they are at the hospital. It seems the girl had called an ambulance to take Mo there. At that moment, Mo returns to his body, and upon realizing that he is in an unfamiliar place, he begins to wonder where he is. While thinking that this place does not look like what he remembers, he feels a strange pain. Looking at his arm, he notices an object stuck in it. He observes it in confusion and wonders if it is what he thinks it is. Soon he realizes that something is entering his body directly through his veins. He discovers that they are nutrients and is surprised to see how they are being rapidly absorbed by his body, helping him recover. He understands that it is not magic, but the effect is impressive. While reflecting on this, he smiles, and the president watches him with suspicion. Mo thinks to himself that apparently Earth has some decent things after all. Seeing Mo laughing like crazy, the president asks him what is happening. However, she immediately changes the subject and mentions that the classroom teacher had asked to meet with him. She adds that the teacher had insisted so much that she had no way to refuse and asks Mo to answer the teacher's calls. Completely ignoring what she said, Mo wonders if it was her who had been helping him recover. Before the president can leave, he stops her and says that he has something to ask her. Confused, she asks what it is, but immediately tells him to be quick since she has to return to the academy. Staring at her, Mo mentions that he does not know enough about Earth and that he needs more information. At that moment, he asks if she knows a place where he can train his body. Right after, he removes the IV, an action that catches the president's attention. Within seconds, Mo begins to feel dizzy, and she watches him in confusion, asking if he has no money. Several hours later, we see that Mo has arrived at a free gym recommended by the class president. There, he follows a training routine and gets excited about feeling good after finishing. As he looks around, he is surprised to see such advanced training equipment. He reflects that 4,000 years ago, training consisted solely of moving rocks, climbing cliffs, and digging holes. He adds that those were simple and primitive methods and wonders if, by using these modern tools, he could become stronger than he expected. Intrigued, he gets on another machine, trying to figure out how to use it, while questioning what kind of training this is. Suddenly, a stone hits his back. Turning around, he sees that it is the bully and the boxer, Cheon. The bully yells at Mo that he has finally found him, saying that he had been searching all over the neighborhood and asked what the hell he was doing in that place. Mo, with a serious face, got off the machine and picked up the stone, asking who had thrown it. The thug quickly responded, admitting that it was him, and told Mo that he was now definitely eliminated. Then he introduced the boxer as his cousin and added that he had defeated all the third-year students. However, before he could continue speaking, Mo silenced him with a strong punch straight to the face. The thug fell to the ground while his cousin watched the scene. Mo, seeing the stone attack as a prior act, smiled with satisfaction and stared at the thug. Finally, he welcomed him to a new fight. The scene shifted to the sanctuary of the gods, where everyone was gathered around a large round table for a regular meeting. However, instead of Mo, John Johan had taken a seat to represent his master. With a written speech in hand, John Johan started the meeting, ready to act as a messenger on behalf of his god. Things took a sharp turn when Lucifer, completely furious, interrupted, demanding to know what the hell John Johan was doing there. The dragon, surprised, hurried to reassure Lucifer, explaining that he was only there to deliver a message and would leave immediately after. After this explanation, John Johan composed himself and proceeded to deliver the message. It was simple. Perhaps too simple. He declared that Mo was eager to face someone stronger than him and requested to be notified immediately if such a person appeared. With that, he concluded. As expected, Lucifer was more than annoyed by such nonsense. He slammed the table with such force that a crack formed on its surface. Still filled with frustration, he loudly expressed his anger. These meetings were already a colossal waste of time, and now Mo didn't even bother to appear in person. Lucifer turned to the other gods and asked if they truly agreed with such insincere behavior from Mo. A heavy silence took over the place, making it clear that they did not, but at the same time, there was nothing they could do about it, at least not for now. Then, a blue-haired god, the third-ranked deity and divine archer, So, intervened. She reminded everyone that these meetings were meant to ensure global stability. When an anomaly arose that even the god of heart couldn't handle, everyone had to step in. However, she found it disappointing, if not outright disrespectful, that Mo hadn't even bothered to show up. Lucifer, already a bomb about to explode, erupted once again. He roared that the real problem was how Mo seemed to treat world maintenance as if it were a game. He warned that the entire system could collapse due to the recklessness with which Mo kept acting on his whims. To make matters worse, Mo's so-called solutions always ended up worsening the problems. His anger reached its peak as he recalled the disaster that occurred 1,000 years ago on the planet Cyclops. Just evoking that memory filled Lucifer with rage. The god of Cyclops quickly nodded, visibly uncomfortable at remembering that catastrophe. By the way, he held the 8th place in the ranking. A bit of context. Apparently, a void creature named Sakot attacked the planet. Mo, in his typical uncontrolled style, destroyed the monster with brute force. But his recklessness caused colossal damage to the planet itself. Lucifer was convinced that if the gods had worked together, they could have minimized the destruction. Instead, Mo had allowed the creature to devour part of the planet before defeating it. Lucifer could no longer tolerate it. He declared that he would no longer stand by and watch as that lunatic destroyed everything in his path. Without hesitation, he stated that Mo didn't even deserve to hold the title of God. Upon hearing this, John Johan panicked. The dragon could only watch as the god's resentment toward Mo became more and more evident. With nothing else he could do, the only thing left for him was to desperately plead for his master to return and fix things. Meanwhile, on Earth, the thug lay on the ground after the blow. He was furious, snorting at the thought that this idiot hadn't even hesitated before hitting him, even with his esteemed cousin, the boxer, right there. Wak finally intervened. He noticed that this kid not only had guts, but also knew how to throw a couple of punches. Curious, he asked Mo if he practiced any sport. Of course, this brute had no idea about something as structured as sports. Mo simply replied that all he did was fight. Cheol nearly choked on his own breath upon hearing such a ridiculous response. But either way, his curiosity was more than piqued. He was ready to test Mo's mettle and throw a few punches. Without further ado, he took the initiative and launched a brutal punch. The result was exactly what one would expect. Blood spurted from Mo's nose as he was sent flying backward. However, this outcome didn't satisfy Cheol in the slightest. He was completely baffled upon realizing that Mo had seen his punch from the start and hadn't even attempted to dodge it. Let me remind you, Mo, the maniac, doesn't dodge preemptive attacks. Now that the stage was set, our boy was ready to give it his all. After observing Cheol's movements, Mo adopts the stance of a boxer, clenching his fists tightly. With all his energy, he throws a direct punch. Cheol, quick as lightning, dodges the attack, but the brute force of the punch makes him step back several paces. The poor man learns the hard way that this ledge guy really has something special. The power behind that punch was completely unreal. On the other hand, Mo is enjoying himself like never before. Throwing a proper boxing punch for the first time felt like a sublime experience. At the moment of impact, he had intentionally tensed the muscles in his arm to the maximum. Of course, now his arm screams in pain, but it was worth it. That punch was incredible. Never before had he felt such strength, especially not with those weaklings who would laugh the moment he touched them. Still, if he wants to keep fighting, he knows he needs to take better care of his body. For now, he decides to use a temporary fix. The antes are ancient Greek boxing straps made of 4-meter-long strips of tanned cowhide, tightly wrapped around the wrists for support. Meanwhile, the thug is losing his mind, seeing how his cousin, the supposed boxer, is being pushed back. Furious, he demands that Cheol explain why he is struggling so much against a nobody. Under growing pressure, Cheol launches himself at Adante again, trying to land another punch. But Mo quickly protects himself, blocking the attack effortlessly. Cheol, for his part, grits his teeth in frustration. He is throwing everything he has, and yet this guy is just standing there, stopping all his punches as if they were nothing. Mo, on the other hand, is analyzing every move. He knows how fast and precise Cheol's punches are, but he also knows they are too predictable. By simply observing the movement of his muscles, Mo can anticipate exactly where each punch is directed. Finally, Mo takes a calculated step back, effortlessly dodging a direct punch. Frustrated at missing, Cheol throws another punch quickly, but Mo dodges that one just as easily. Then Mo counterattacks with a perfectly aimed strike at Cheol's hand, causing agonizing pain. Mo can't help but find it funny how Cheol's pained reaction is surprisingly similar to the thug's expression. If he had any doubts before, now they are completely gone. These two are definitely cousins. With another decisive blow, Mo knocks Cheol unconscious while the thug remains frozen in fear under Mo's intense gaze. Although Mo is eager to finish what they started, the thug can barely tremble, his courage completely drained from his body. Seeing the thug cower, Mo concludes that he has lost all will to fight. He directly asks him if he plans to continue. But before the thug can articulate a response, Mo delivers a devastating direct punch to his face. What follows is a relentless flurry of blows. Mo doesn't give the thug a single second to surrender. Punch after punch lands, and in the end, the thug is completely shattered. To finish it off, Mo lands one final bone-chilling strike, leaving the thug knocked out for good. Satisfied that his opponent no longer has the strength to continue, Mo turns, grabs Cheol's ear as a trophy, and leaves the two defeated cousins behind. Later, Mo returns to his apartment. Sitting there and reflecting on recent events, he admits that while fighting has been fun so far, the fact that his body breaks so easily is holding him back immensely. Never, not even in his wildest imaginations, did he think his muscles would tear simply from throwing a few punches. Although this muscle-tearing process is crucial for growing stronger and continuing to fight, the constant interruptions are a problem. Eventually, he decides to return to the Sanctuary of the Gods to retrieve something he had asked Jongyong to prepare, a magical recovery orb. However, when he tries to return to the sanctuary, he fails. No matter how much he concentrates, the transition simply doesn't happen, leaving him wondering what the hell is going on. To understand the situation, let's go back a few days to the divine realm, the domain under the charge of the god Lucifer. It was at that moment that Mo had forcibly thrown Ledge into Lucifer's world. Before leaving, Mo had told Jongyong to try to obtain a magical recovery orb if possible. These orbs, as it turns out, are special magical objects that are usually found on mana-rich planets like Emor. In those worlds, they are common and casually used for healing and recovery. However, on Earth, a planet with scarce mana, these orbs exist only thanks to divine blessings or the whims of the gods. As a result, they are extremely rare on Earth and only a few humans throughout history have possessed it. Those who did were revered as gods by the rest of humanity. Yongyong promises to prepare what his master requested before returning. But curiously, he asks who will attend the regular meetings, as Mo plans to be absent. In response, Mo rummages through his pants and pulls out a piece of paper containing the speech that the dragon must deliver. With that, his master departs. Meanwhile, Lucifer has been watching closely with his gigantic eye. In the present, there is only one thought in Lucifer's mind. Mo's body is currently empty. Since Mo did not attend the meeting, it means he plans to stay away for a longer time. This is a golden opportunity that Lucifer does not want to let slip away. In fact, it is an opportunity that only comes once every 1,000 years. Without hesitation, Lucifer quickly uses one of his spells and summons purple rods that fall with force. But Yongyong swiftly dodges the attack and confronts him, severely questioning Lucifer's intentions. With a firm tone, the dragon inquires whether this is perhaps a declaration of war against the god of the earth. Lucifer rises into the air, making it clear that expelling the god of the earth from the seat of divinity is a war, and he intends to win. With this declaration, Yongan does not hold back. He quickly opens his jaws, preparing a compressed fire breath attack, and shoots flames at Lucifer. However, Lucifer throws the attack aside, as if it were nothing. The attack literally covers 360 degrees of the entire planet and causes a massive explosion. The explosion is so enormous that even Zoe has to activate her self-defense aura, extending it over all the other gods to protect them from collateral damage. After that massive attack, Jonjun decides to level up. He activates his polymorphic release ability, and the guy grows to a massive size in comparison to Lucifer, who now looks like a tiny mosquito. But as we all know, size does not matter. What really matters is endurance. And it is no surprise that someone as large as John Johan is eventually overwhelmed, so already looks tired. And since she does not want to be part of this mess, she begins to leave. But Lucifer quickly stops her before she goes. He wants to know which side she is on, whether she supports Mo or opposes him. But So does not want to take sides, so she decides to remain neutral. Lucifer, however, does not care if she remains neutral as long as she stays out of the way. He turns to the others and tells them to step forward if anyone opposes this idea. If anyone wants to go against him, he is more than ready to take care of them personally. John Joe then speaks, questioning Lucifer's audacity and thinking that he can actually defeat Master Mo. Lucifer mocks him in response, confident that Mo, with that weak earthly body, could not do anything. John Joe becomes worried when he realizes that Lucifer already knows this. Lucifer reminds the dragon that complacency in strength and negligence in vigilance will lead to Mo's downfall. But John Jay is not willing to let Lucifer get away with it. He quickly counterattacks with his giant tail. However, Lucifer cuts it off with his sword as easily as slicing a cucumber. Gravely wounded, the poor dragon is left in bad shape. But Lucifer makes it clear that as long as John Joe is alive, he can still reach Earth. And once there, he will make sure to destroy Mo while he is in his weakened state. Johan bursts into laughter at Lucifer's words, mocking the idea that this bastard has any chance. The scene shifts to Cheol, who has just left the infirmary after being treated. In the gym, he is receiving a scolding from his superior. His superior does not like the fact that this guy ended up gravely injured and now wants to stop fighting despite the competition being just around the corner. The poor guy can do nothing but apologize, but his apologies do not calm his superior. The superior orders him not to return until his arm is healed and dismisses him, telling him to get out of his sight. After receiving those harsh words, the poor guy begins walking toward the exit. As he leaves, he runs into Kei Cheol at the exit. Kei, of course, is not happy to see his friend in such a bad state and asks him about his broken arm. Now that Cheol thinks about it, Kang is the best boxer in his gym, so he wonders if he could defeat the person who did this to him. He lowers his head in embarrassment before beginning to explain. He claims that the bully was being harassed, so he came to save him, but the opposing group ganged up on him and beat him up. What a coward. He literally distorted the whole story just to save his image, lying that he was attacked by several people instead of admitting that he was defeated in a one-on-one fight by Mo. In any case, Cheol states that his left arm and his ear are in this state because of those guys. He even starts crying to convince Kei to fight those bastards for him. But it seems Kang is not as stupid or brainless as this blonde. Kang simply tells him that he should have been more careful before the competition. Instead of fighting, he could have done an extra sparring session. Of course, Cheol didn't expect this response. The fact that Kei isn't even considering helping him makes him a little upset. Suddenly, Kei stops, turns around with a clearly angry expression, and asks this idiot who it was that beat him to a pulp. Now let's go back to Missouri. After trying to teleport several times, he once again fails to return. This is something very strange, to say the least. There is only one scenario in which he wouldn't be able to return. The first is when the original body is damaged, but Mo is sure that his body should be protected by Yong. And even if it wasn't Yong who damaged the body, there aren't many things that could hurt him. It is then that an idea occurs to him. Perhaps all the gods have united to attack him. He feels annoyed, thinking that of all moments, they chose this one to challenge him. He desperately wants to fight them, but isn't sure how to do so while being trapped here. After punching the poor pillow into oblivion, Mo tries once again, calming down. Even if all the gods did it at the same time, he is sure that Yong wouldn't fall so easily. Even so, Mo cannot afford the luxury of sitting idly by without doing anything, so he decides to do what he can for now. The next day, we find him once again in the park, where he is back to his strength training. At this moment, his main goal is to strengthen the muscles that are not his arms. He can feel the tension in muscles he doesn't normally use, and although it hurts, the sensation is quite exhilarating. The more he pushes himself, the more he enjoys it. His laughter echoes through the park as he delights in this moment of ecstasy. Nearby spectators are completely bewildered, witnessing this strange guy enjoying himself in such a peculiar, almost unsettling way. After this rigorous training session, his legs finally give out, and he collapses. It is then that he notices the class president, who does not seem very pleased to see him there. She asks him in a somewhat harsh tone why the hell he isn't attending school. Later, the two sit down, and he initiates the conversation, stating that he just wants to become stronger, and that's the only reason he's training. The president then asks him another overwhelming question. Why does he want to become stronger? He explains that it's so he can fight better, as he is currently too weak to battle. His body is completely untrained, and he needs to develop it. His arms are already in bad shape, even though he has only been in a few fights. With strength training in the gym, he can build endurance, and if he gets stronger, he will be able to fight for longer, possibly more than once, and eventually more than twice. His body will also move better. Listening to this guy talk non-stop about training is starting to make the girl dizzy. He's been talking for hours, and she isn't sure how she's supposed to convince this maniac to go to school. Then, an idea occurs to her. She asks why he even bothers training if there's no one to fight. She reminds him that he's only training alone, with no one around to challenge him. He needs to meet people, stir up some conflict, and only then will he find someone to fight. Before leaving, she orders him to start attending school regularly from tomorrow and to stop making her put up with more of his nonsense. As she walks away, he begins to see the logic behind her words. It's true that the guys he beat up probably won't show up again, so he will. Fighting while waiting for his body to recover doesn't sound like a bad idea. While still deciding whether to start going to school tomorrow or not, a suspicious guy sneaks up behind him and calls him by his name. He quickly picks up on the guy's tone and lets out a heavy sigh, feeling a sense of satisfaction. It seems he has finally found his next target. When the fist flies toward him, the maniac turns around with a big smile, ready to take it directly in the face. Then, we see the story of Kang at 15 years old, at the moment he was beginning to stand out in boxing. His sister, a rising novice dancer, had a stalker whose obsession became increasingly dangerous, until he finally crossed the line. He started following her and tried to kidnap her, but luckily, Kay intercepted him in time. He had always protected his sister, and although he managed to prevent the crime, he stopped him too soon. The stalker did not receive the proper punishment, and seeing his failure, his obsession only grew. He became even more dangerous, to the point of chasing her with a weapon in his hands. Once again, Candy intervened and stopped him, but this time, he suffered a wound on his face. Although he prevented the crime again, he wasn't as fast as before. The stalker managed to injure his sister's leg, shattering her future as a dancer. Her wings were broken. After that, Kang stopped trusting the law and decided to do what it could not. Secretly, he began patrolling every night, ensuring that those who showed signs of becoming criminals paid the price in advance. For him, fighting was the only way to deliver justice. Now, in the present, Kang had struck Mo hard, who staggered back from the impact. Noticing his injuries, Mo recognized how dangerous his attacker's blows were and wondered if he was being tested. However, facing an opponent who seemed worthy, he smiled and mentioned that after all, he had attacked first. With growing excitement, he admitted that he had thought it would be difficult to find fights lately, but it seemed he was lucky. Kay watched him, confused by his smile, and launched another direct attack at his face. However, something unsettled him. Mo blocked the blow with ease. Kay then decided to unleash a series of consecutive attacks, but soon realized that his opponent was blocking them one after another. Enraged, he increased his speed, but each of his strikes continued to be stopped. Fixing his gaze on Mo, Kang asked why he was hitting others, and if he wanted to become a thug. Mo, with a smile full of excitement, replied that he wasn't a fan of incomplete conversations, and with a hand gesture, invited him to attack again. The boy's arrogant attitude made Kay furious. As he yelled at Mo to get ready, he unleashed a flurry of holds, but Mo dodged them effortlessly. Watching him closely, Kay recognized his agility and concluded that the only way to hit him was by blocking his right field of vision. But before he could execute his plan, Mo began laughing with excitement, pulling him out of his thoughts. Kay was bewildered by his reaction, and as he questioned him, anger started taking over. Still laughing, Mo murmured to himself that in his current state, he wouldn't be able to defeat his new opponent. But that didn't mean he should waste the opportunity to fight. As he said this, he covered his face with one hand and murmured to himself that since he was incapable of winning, he would at least enjoy the fight. He smiled and spoke to himself again, reminding himself to stay calm and never stop smiling. At that moment, he began receiving a barrage of attacks and soon realized that his opponent was targeting only the spots where he was injured. Taking advantage of a momentary lapse, Kang launched a powerful punch directly to his ribs. The impact was so strong that Mo was sent several steps back. After attacking with all his strength, Kay stared at him and asked if he had realized yet that his arm wasn't responding due to his injuries. Without giving him time to react, he added that no matter how much pain he felt, he would be judged without mercy. The pain from his wounds, combined with Kang's attack, made Mo smile with excitement once again. He immediately recalled a similar fight he had in the past, and murmured that although he couldn't always win, he always tried to enjoy every confrontation. Still, his desire for victory never disappeared. Then, he resorted to a technique he had developed. He decided to calm his emotions. Once serene, he began evaluating his enemy, learning from the situation and using tricks to dodge the attacks. The more he thought and fought, the stronger and smarter he became, finding new opportunities to counterattack. He had named that technique Nothing because he suppressed his emotions to the maximum to make himself stronger. However, no matter how much he tried to contain himself, the joy of fighting always managed to slip through. Every time he wanted to win, he simply suppressed his emotions even more. As he stared at Kang, He placed his hand over his face once again. When he lowered it, his expression changed to a strange grimace. "Every time I'm about to lose, I force myself to look angry," he said. Mo's expression bewildered Kang, who thought he was mocking him. His rage immediately increased. Several veins bulged on his face as he glared at him furiously. "Damn lunatic!" he roared, clenched his fist tightly, and with overflowing rage, he lunged at Mo with the intention of hitting him while shouting, "And that grimace he makes? Let's say it didn't do much good," because his opponent advances towards him to try to land some blows on him, but he easily dodged each of his opponent's blows. But now, he finds himself behind a tree. Now, he could no longer be escaping. However, the protagonist thought faster than anyone else. He then dug his foot into the ground. Only then, he stood up, also raising dirt upwards. He uses this dirt that he threw upwards to distract his opponent. He puts his arms in front of him to defend himself from that dirt. Now that he threw it, he says that this was a dirty trick, throwing dirt in his opponent's face to win. That was more than unfair, but the guy ends up asking him to stop talking and asks him to continue. What makes him go into a rage is that he is now at his most furious. He turns red, and then he makes a quick move. With a blow, he goes towards the protagonist, but before it can hit him, he quickly dodges. After dodging, we then see him from behind. From behind now, he realizes that he hits him with a very strong blow, but again, he dodges it all. Only later does he realize that this guy was also trying to aim at his chin. Maybe this could be working, since fighting without mourning also existed in the outside world. If there was any difference between the two guys he had just fought before, he saw a combination of both things. Both of them fought basically defending themselves the whole time, and the terrain here he can be using to his advantage, since here he can be using his terrain to his advantage, as there are countless things he can use to beat his opponent, but with perhaps the evolution of the terrain that became paved allowed today's fighters to become much more aggressive. With aggressive techniques, we see him knowing one thing there, that if he knows exactly where he can be aiming, it becomes easier to guide his movements. So with the movements here and there, he easily dodged his opponent. In the end, if he made a few more movements, the chance of the variables I set up before occurring would increase a lot. He accidentally slipped on some small rocks, which opened an opening for him, giving the protagonist a total advantage. Now that he had the advantage, he opened his hand and prepared to punch him in the face. After preparing the punch, he hit him squarely in the face, but now that he had landed the blow, he realized that his arm wasn't moving the way he wanted. He even tried to use his elbow, but nothing worked. The only thing that happened was a crack in his mask. Only after all that did he laugh, and only later did he say that he lost. We only really see what happened a minute later. He managed to hit that thing he was holding in his hand in his leg. After this, he falls to his knees in enormous pain. After all this, he asks himself why he found this so funny. If he really wants to laugh, he will do something here that he will not like in the future. That thing is to make him never laugh like this again in his life. So, he raises the truncheon up towards the protagonist. The prota realizes that he has now lost, and it approached him as quickly as possible. Knowing that he would lose, he just closes his eyes and only then thinks, how long has it been since he last lost to an opponent? Maybe this happened 4,000 years ago, but something quickly happens. Something hits his opponent in the face, making him lose his concentration. After all this, we hear a voice calling for his master, and the guy wonders if, by chance, something attacked him. But he realizes knowing that staying here would be a waste of time. He ends up taking off one of his clothes, a blouse, which he then puts on and ends up kind of leaving. After he leaves, we see the protagonist, who falls to his knees, until a lizard's foot appears behind him, and then that lizard starts calling for the protagonist. Then the protagonist looks back and recognizes him, and now asks him what was happening, why he was here like that. And, for that, we need to go back a little, and there we find Lucifer, celebrating, saying that now this guy can no longer return to his body, since the place where he is a cut space, which is not connected to nothing. No soul can enter this body, and all he needs to do here now is open it. A barrier, therefore. Looking back, we find that little lizard of the protagonist completely defeated, so he comments, when he deals with this guy, with all certainty, after finishing the fight, this one will be the owner of the earth completely. But he starts to say something, which he below does not understand, but he just says, what is this barrier in front of him? He comments that nothing can be connecting with the protagonist anymore, but it was possible to connect something to the protagonist. Only it was necessary to break the barrier he placed, but that was impossible. A guy like him would never be able to. But Lucifer, thinking that everything was normal, he notices a strong light coming towards the protagonist's pet. We realize that he was activating an ability, which is better known as a massive explosion. After he activates this ability, he even thinks that this guy was going crazy, and only later do we really see there in Lucifer's castle what really happened. A flash of light came from the building, from the top of the place where Lucifer and the caterpillar were, but after several minutes that place was filled with a gigantic flash, and only later did we realize that up there an explosion had occurred. And we could see this explosion from outside the planet, totally gigantic, and just like that, Shaul recognizes that voice and turns his head, realizing that the protagonist O had found him. John, on the other hand, points in another direction. There's an incredible smell coming from that store in front. Both opponents exchange glances. The protagonist begins to take a step forward. Kanchal asks him to wait a second, saying that there was a misunderstanding and that he has no intention of fighting. But upon seeing that he was not being heard, he realizes that the situation has worsened. As the protagonist gets closer and is about to launch the first strike, both prepare for combat. However, at that moment, they both remain still. The protagonist expected him to attack first, but there was no preemptive strike. Could it be that he really has no intention of fighting? Without Khan noticing, his staff was taken by the boy who was being attacked. He was going to kill him with the staff, but with a simple movement, Kjol dodges the strike before fully receiving it. However, now the attack was heading toward the protagonist. Kjol is concerned, as there wouldn't be enough time for him to dodge. However, the protagonist remains motionless, looking at the staff, and decides to take the hit without moving. A drop of blood trickles down his head, and he mentions that the blow didn't hurt much. He then delivers a front kick to the stomach of the boy, who attacked him with the staff. The staff flies through the air, and the protagonist O catches it with one hand. He positions the handle behind the opponent's neck, pulling him forward, and both collide foreheads. This causes a momentary pain for the opponent. The protagonist delivers several strikes to different parts of the adversary's body, both to the stomach and the leg, thus defeating the afro-haired boy with his fists and the staff. At first, it was exciting, but then it became boring upon realizing that his opponent could no longer fight. When he arrived on Earth, it had been so long since he had felt the impact of a blow. It was fun. But if it's this one-sided, it's no different from before. He needs at least that other guy to provide him with some fun and tension in the fight. The protagonist thinks for a moment and turns to check if the boy in the blue hoodie was still there, but for some reason, he had disappeared. He wonders where that guy went. It turns out that a while ago, he was running away from the scene. He wonders how the protagonist keeps finding him, but now that he observes him more closely, he realizes he was smiling, or more precisely, he seemed excited. Looking back, the protagonist doesn't notice that John was right in front of him. This little lizard was still thinking about the delicious smell coming from the store. Now that he reflects on it, since arriving on Earth, he hadn't had a decent meal. Absent-mindedly, he is hit by Kachol, who doesn't pay attention and keeps running, leaving John semi-conscious. Chol arrives home and leaves his shoes at the entrance. As he walks inside, he starts wondering why that boy seemed to enjoy fighting so much. Does he really like to fight? At that moment, his sister also arrives home. She tells her brother that the enforcer arrested another criminal today. Her name is Kanj Unaya, 26 years old. After being harassed, she decided to start beating up criminals and changed her career from a ballerina to an enforcer. She asks her brother why he is blocking her way. He asks her to move. Kanchal asks if it doesn't hurt when someone hits an enforcer. She realizes that he didn't even react. It seems like he's living up to his name. Since she's home, she's going to make some ramen without eggs. Chol notices that his sister no longer seems bothered by that day's incident. Since the aggressor hurt his sister, the only thing he feels when punching someone is anger. He wasn't like that when he started. When he first took up boxing, it was different. The next morning, we see all the students going to school. Johan apologizes to his master for being on his shoulder yesterday. He couldn't eat and was tired. Some students wonder what that thing was. It looked like a Komodo dragon. As the protagonist walks, he notices someone ahead. He greets Yugin, who was also heading to school. She gets excited upon seeing that John was with him. The protagonist asks if she understood what he said. John J wants to know if it was clear, referring to the agreement of lending him in exchange for help finding someone. She mentions that she believes she knows who the person he's looking for is. If it's someone who covers his face and provokes fights, this guy is known as the Vigilante. It's the first time the protagonist hears this name. She says he is famous. That name is short for someone who takes justice into their own hands. Basically, he is someone who attacks criminals without hesitation. He is known for immediately attacking anyone who acts like a bully or a criminal. She wants to know why the protagonist wants to fight this guy. Did he do something wrong? Act like a delinquent? The protagonist replies that he doesn't know, but there's one thing he's sure of. This guy keeps running away from him. But next time, he won't let him escape. Without realizing it, Chol was behind him. He approaches the protagonist and says in a low voice that he will wait for him after school, and if he doesn't come, Kanchal himself will find him. He then walks away toward the school, retrieving the staff. Yugin asks if the two of them know each other. The protagonist replies that this guy is the Vigilante. As long as he can fight, he can wait as long as necessary. But holding back is quite difficult. The protagonist starts shaking his leg, and John begins to feel dizzy from the intense movement. When classes end, the teacher tells the students that if they study at night, they should have dinner and then study in the third-floor classroom. That's all. Since the protagonist had something to do, he leaves Joe in charge of Johan. Johan was dizzy from the movement. She happily takes him in her arms, leaves the room with a sparkle in her eyes. After everyone leaves, someone places a hand between the entrance of the door. It was Kachol. The protagonist had been waiting for him. It seems he waited in silence. Kanchal opens his backpack to take something out. He puts on a glove to avoid hurting his wrist, like the strap he used that time to prevent injuring his arm. He asks the protagonist if he likes to fight. The protagonist responds that he is mistaken. It's not that he likes to fight. It's simply that the pain and the impact of hitting and being hit excite him a lot. He feels his muscles screaming in pain as they are used. From the past to the present, only fighting has made him feel alive. For that reason, he can't help but fight against people who catch his attention. Chol mentions that his expression does not match what he is saying. He takes one more thing from his backpack and hands the protagonist a pair of gloves. The gloves fall on his head, and he catches them with his hands. Kanchal asks him to put them on. Seriously, he can't hit a guy who isn't even a bully. The protagonist throws a straight punch. Seems like this bastard is impatient, but there's no reason to get angry. He came here to fight from the beginning. He doesn't know why he's like this. Probably he has a habit of becoming overly emotional. He keeps his distance from Cole. He must think of this as a match in the ring. He can't let his body control him. He must stay relaxed. The protagonist begins to approach. She immediately lands a punch on his face, followed by another with the other hand. This definitely feels good. He must relax and use the body's rotational force, transferring all the weight to his fingers and sending it directly at the protagonist. This feeling was completely exhilarating. This was boxing. If the protagonist didn't have physical reinforcement, this could have been dangerous. Now it's becoming manageable. Fighting this person was getting more and more fun. Meanwhile, in another room, a boy named D chokes on his own saliva, waking up and realizing he overslept. A night of studying. He notices the chocolate bar. There is a note underneath it. The person who left it asks why he always falls asleep when he comes to school. Could he be a Snorlax? He checks his phone and realizes it's already time. He can't be late. He goes down the stairs while eating the chocolate bar. His name is Lei Jum. He is 20 years old. He notices that inside a room, there is a fight. The protagonist starts to guard himself to withstand the blows, but at a certain moment he lifts his leg and lands a kick on Kanchu's stomach, followed by a kick to the face. But Chol manages to block in time. If this is boxing, why is he kicking? The protagonist doesn't know boxing, so he doesn't know what he is referring to. He jumps again. There's no rule saying he can only use his fists to fight. He launches a sidekick at Kachol's face, causing a small scratch, then kicks his shoulder. T-Shol begins to block all of the protagonist's attacks. He never thought kicks could be so strong. Another kick lands on the lower part of his groin. This is not good. If he hits the lower body, Kachol will collapse. The kick lands, but the damage was minimal. Kachol keeps his distance. The protagonist mentions that John's physical reinforcement effect has already ended. Chol wants to ask him a question. Has he run out of strength? And everything, of course, continues with the guy there asking the protagonist if he was afraid. He then, after hearing this, simply laughs in his face, of course. Laughing in his face. We see him getting a little headache. He also starts to laugh, which makes the protagonist laugh in his face too. This becomes an infinite circle. And in the end, both start laughing non-stop, and, while everyone was laughing outside, we can see that guy from before, who was now eating a chocolate bar, while wondering if they weren't fighting just now. Why did he stop to laugh now? People like that, well, for him it was the most stupid thing. And when he sees people like that, he gets even more irritated because he doesn't like that kind of person. While he was leaving, the scene goes back to them. They were still fighting. He advanced, but now he thought about using a defense to beat his opponent. However, he already prepares a punch that goes towards him. But before he can catch it, the protagonist uses his knee to defend himself from the blow. But the blow was powerful, which makes him spin, making his defense useless, which then makes him manage to hit him in the face, a very strong punch. The punch was powerful, because he managed to knock the protagonist to the ground. On the ground, he realizes, with that body, he still can't overcome his solid muscles. But if he could use the third one, that would change everything. However, thinking about one thing he could do, he has a memory which he does a minute later. He gets up and stays ready. Now, he could be fighting, because he thought about strategy. This thing then ends up flowing in his hand. As soon as it flows in his hand, he closes his fists and only then goes towards the protagonist, which he calls a chintota. However, his punch that was intended to hit him ends up simply stopping quickly. With only his hand defending himself from it, he was surprised. The blow was supposed to be strong. Why did he hit it so lightly? But something goes through it, and that ends up catching his attention. But it was his mistake, because the protagonist took advantage of this opportunity to catch his other punch that was free to hit him right in the face. After all this happened, he tries to ask himself, what was that? After all, his punch was weak, but why? He was feeling dizzy, and from now on he needs to stay focused. However, once again that appears behind him, and this again catches his attention. However, once again, because he looked back, he ends up receiving a headbutt from the protagonist. This headbutt was powerful, as it managed to throw them to the ground. While he was on the ground, we can then see the protagonist wondering if this was strong. But to defeat him, he needed to use mana. But to use mana, you need to gather it to condense in a single point, and only the palm of your hand. But to be specific, the thing he used itself was not mana. After all, here in the atmosphere there is dust, oxygen, and other things. That would get in the way, so he used a type of purity cleaning there, which ended up cleaning all of that, leaving that place completely in a vacuum, leaving only mana in that place. But there's one thing. Earth has no mana, however. He only needed to condense the air that ended up disappearing. Only later, that air became something explosive, which went towards him. And only with that he managed to defeat him. Fallen on the ground, we see him with a slightly strange face. Only later does he realize that this guy was interesting, but now he was approaching his opponent on the ground. Here, he was going to deliver the final blow. But at this moment, he is interrupted because he ended up putting his hand on his face. So he tries to ask himself what he was going to do. At that moment, he admits that he really lost to the boy. But there's one thing next time: he won't be allowing the protagonist to escape so well. Dizzy in the head, he opens the door and only then leaves, while the protagonist licks the last remaining happiness from that fight. Time passes. Night ends up arriving. In the meantime, we see the protagonist's pet, who, all armed, goes there to a place, since now he has gotten everything he needed. But behind her, she still wonders if the lizard needed anything else. If he did, he could just call her. However, the scene changes there. He was walking through the city. While walking through the city, he ends up finding that guy who faced the protagonist, but at this moment, he has a memory that it was this guy who ended up knocking him out last time. The last time he was erased by this human. But now, he won't let fate let him get away so easily, and so the guy sees something on the ground, which surprises him. It looked like a dog, but it had the face of a snake. However, it quickly jumps and goes towards that guy. With his startle reflex, he ends up getting punched. A punch that was enough to knock him down. But to really knock him down, it took a 0.16-second reaction. On the ground, now unconscious, he tried to ask himself what that thing was. A dog? But ignoring this, he disappears there in the back of the city. Another person appears. This was the protagonist, who realizes that his pet was erased with just one punch. The scene changes there. He was walking through the city, and while walking through the city, he ends up meeting that guy who faced the protagonist. He then sees the protagonist and so crosses the street, asks him to stop. Now, he has a question. Why the protagonist was wearing the uniform, of all days, on Saturday. Speaking of Saturday, he wonders why today is Saturday. He didn't even know what day it was, which leaves this guy completely confused. What was this kid thinking? But anyway, he asks our protagonist something. If he likes to fight, he answers that he has to do it. In his opinion, I like to fight, especially because the face he makes when he fights is satisfying. But, interrupting, he ends up asking the protagonist to follow him because if he really likes to fight, he will be taking the protagonist to the specific place. There, he will find opponents that are worthy of him, something that will make him more than satisfied. And as soon as he talks about it, he smiles, and so the protagonist thinks this guy is amazing, so he asks him to take him to the place there then. If he doesn't want to take him, he ends up choosing to want to fight him here now. But he ends up wondering what kind of head he has to want to fight right now, since he got beaten up a lot yesterday. But while he was talking about it, we see on the coast there, in the backpack, the lizard, the protagonist, totally irritated, his face says something not so good about this guy. He will be taking revenge. But for that, we will only find out in the next part. But before I leave a like below and also leave a comment with what you thought of this new chapter.